The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the St. Regency Grand Cathedral as Sophie Bennett pressed her earpiece deeper into her ear canal, listening to the frantic voice of the florist on the other end. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the ivory runner that stretched down the center aisle, making sure every fold lay perfectly flat. "Yes, I understand the peonies are wilting," Sophie whispered urgently into her phone, glancing toward the bride's preparation room where Clara Montgomery was getting her final touches. "Replace them with the backup roses. We discussed this contingency yesterday." "Sophie," the voice cut through the chapel like a whip crack. Marcus Devereaux strode toward her, his Tom Ford tuxedo immaculate, his face twisted with irritation. "Why are there only 5 champagne fountains? I specifically said 6. Do you have any idea how this makes me look?" Sophie straightened, smoothing down her simple gray dress that Clara had insisted she wear as maid of honor, though Marcus had fought against it. "The 6th fountain arrived damaged. I've already arranged for." "I don't want to hear your excuses." Marcus stepped closer, his breath hot on her face. "You're supposed to be competent. That's literally your only job, be competent." He jabbed his finger toward her chest with each word, stopping just short of touching her. The groomsmen nearby laughed, a chorus of expensive cologne and inherited wealth. Sophie's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned over the past 6 months that showing emotion around Marcus was like showing weakness to a predator. "I'll handle it," she said quietly. "You better." Marcus turned to his friends, his voice carrying intentionally. 5 years of business school and Clara hires someone who can't count to 6. More laughter. "You know what? Once I'm CEO of Montgomery Shipping, you're the first one I'm firing. You're a nobody, Sophie. A charity case Clara picked up because she felt sorry for you." Sophie's fingers curled into fists at her sides, but she simply nodded and walked away, her sensible flat silent on the marble. Behind her, she heard Marcus say to his best man, "I give her 2 weeks after the honeymoon. Clara won't even notice she's gone." What Marcus didn't know, what nobody in this cathedral knew except 2 people, was that Sophie Bennett hadn't always been nobody. 5 years ago, she'd been the anonymous strategist behind Titanium Ventures, meteoric rise from a garage startup to a $3 billion company. She'd been the one mapping out market strategies at 3 a.m., the one who'd turned a simple cloud storage concept into an empire. And she'd done it all from the shadows, exactly as she preferred. Sophie slipped into the bride's preparation room where Clara sat before an enormous mirror, her blonde hair swept into an elaborate updo, her Vera Wang dress a masterpiece of silk and lace. "He's being awful again, isn't he?" Clara asked softly, meeting Sophie's eyes in the reflection. "It doesn't matter," Sophie said, but her voice betrayed her. Clara turned, taking Sophie's hands. "It does matter. Sophie, are you sure about this? We could still." "No," Sophie's voice was firm. "We stick to the plan, trust me." A knock at the door interrupted them. A staff member poked his head in. "Miss Montgomery, there's been an arrival. Mr. Vincent Blackwell is here." The room went silent. Clara's eyes widened. "Blackwell, as in Titanium Ventures." Sophie felt a smile tug at her lips for the first time that day. Right on time. Outside, the atmosphere had shifted. A convoy of 3 black SUVs had pulled up to the cathedral's entrance, and from the center vehicle emerged a man who commanded attention without trying. Vincent Blackwell was 52, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and his ice-blue eyes scanned the gathered crowd with the precision of someone who assessed value in nanoseconds. Marcus practically sprinted across the courtyard, his earlier cruelty forgotten in his eagerness. "Mr. Blackwell, what an honor. I'm Marcus Devereaux, soon-to-be CEO of Montgomery Shipping. I had no idea you were on the guest list." Vincent's gaze passed over Marcus as if he were transparent, landing instead on Sophie, who had emerged from the preparation room. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds before Vincent looked away, but something unspoken passed between them. "I'm not on the guest list," Vincent said, his voice deep and measured. "I'm here on business." "Business?" Marcus's smile faltered. "Well, after the ceremony, I'd love to discuss some opportunities. I'm actually in the process of restructuring Montgomery Shipping's entire logistics network, and I think there could be some synergies." "I don't discuss business with people who don't matter," Vincent said flatly, walking past Marcus toward the cathedral entrance. Marcus's face flushed red, but he recovered quickly, following Vincent like a puppy. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Once I marry Clara, I'll be controlling a $500 million shipping empire. I definitely matter, Mr. Blackwell." Vincent stopped, turning slowly. "Do you know what I find interesting, Mr. Devereaux? In my experience, people who have real power never feel the need to announce it." The gathered guests whispered among themselves. Sophie watched from the doorway, her heart pounding. This was it. 6 months of planning, of enduring Marcus's cruelty, of playing the role of the downtrodden assistant. It was all building to this moment. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry, I don't think I understand what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything." Vincent's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm simply observing. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to find my seat. I have a feeling this ceremony is going to be quite memorable." As Vincent walked away, Marcus turned and spotted Sophie. His rage found an outlet. He crossed to her in 3 long strides. This is your fault. You were supposed to coordinate the guest list. Did you send him an invitation?" "I don't have access to." "Shut up." Marcus grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "I don't know what game you think you're playing, but if you've embarrassed me, if you've done anything to sabotage this wedding, I will destroy you. Do you understand? I will make sure you never work in this city again." Sophie looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. "I understand perfectly, Marcus." He released her with a shove. "Get out of my sight, and during the ceremony, stay in the back. I don't want you ruining the photos." Sophie retreated to the shadows of the cathedral's rear vestibule, her arm throbbing where Marcus had grabbed her. A staff member approached with a glass of water, but it was Vincent's assistant, David, in disguise. "He's getting nervous," David whispered. "Good," Sophie replied. "Is everything in place?" "The documents are ready. The SEC has been notified. We're just waiting for your signal." Sophie nodded, her eyes fixed on Marcus, who was now frantically checking his phone, his earlier confidence evaporating. She knew what he was looking at, the same thing he'd been looking at for months: his gambling debts, his secret accounts, the shell company he'd created to liquidate Montgomery Shipping's assets the moment the marriage certificate was signed. What Marcus didn't know was that Sophie had been tracking every transaction, every secret meeting, every lie he'd told Clara. She documented everything, built an airtight case, and then she'd called in the one person who had the power and the resources to help her execute the perfect revenge. The organ music swelled. Guests took their seats. The groomsmen lined up at the altar, Marcus among them, his smile plastered back on but not quite reaching his eyes. The bridesmaids began their procession, and then finally Clara appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm. Sophie watched from her position in the shadows as Clara walked toward her future husband, each step measured and graceful. Clara's father, Robert Montgomery, looked proud but tired. He'd built his shipping empire from nothing, and now he was handing his daughter to a man he believed would carry on his legacy. If only he knew. The ceremony began. Father Michael, who'd baptized Clara as a baby, spoke about love and commitment and partnership. Marcus's responses were smooth, practiced. Clara's voice trembled slightly, and Sophie felt a pang of guilt. They were putting Clara through this charade, but Clara had insisted. When Sophie had shown her the evidence of Marcus's betrayal 3 months ago, Clara had been devastated. But her devastation had quickly transformed into cold fury. "I want him exposed," Clara had said, her eyes red from crying. "I want everyone to see what he really is, and I want it to hurt." Now, as Father Michael reached the critical moment, the cathedral fell silent. "If anyone here has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence stretched. Marcus smirked, confident, and then Vincent Blackwell stood. The rustle of expensive fabric filled the cathedral as heads turned. Vincent stepped out of his pew and walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Marcus's smirk faltered. "Mr. Blackwell," Father Michael looked confused, "do you have an objection?" "Not to the marriage," Vincent said, his voice carrying easily. "But I do have some concerns about the groom's financial situation that I believe the bride should be aware of before she says, 'I do.'" Marcus laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. I don't know what you think you know, but—" Marcus Devereaux. Vincent pulled a folder from his jacket. "Currently owes $4.7 million to various gambling establishments and loan sharks. Has created a shell company called Devereaux Holdings LLC for the express purpose of liquidating Montgomery Shipping's assets. Has forged signatures on preliminary sale documents. And has, as of 3 days ago, put a down payment on a penthouse in Monaco, where he planned to relocate immediately after transferring the funds." The cathedral erupted. Guests gasped. Clara's father stood, his face purple with rage, but Clara remained still at the altar, her expression unreadable. Marcus's face went from red to white in seconds. Those are lies, slander, I'll sue you for." "Sue me with what money?" Vincent's smile was cold. "Because as of 6 a.m. this morning I purchased all of your debts, which means you now owe me $4.7 million, and I'm calling it due. Immediately." "You can't do that," Marcus's voice cracked. "I absolutely can, and I have." Vincent handed the folder to Father Michael. "These documents detail every transaction, every forged signature, every illegal transfer Mr. Devereaux has attempted. I've already forwarded copies to the SEC, the FBI, and Montgomery Shipping's board of directors." Marcus swayed on his feet. "Clara, you have to believe me. This is all a misunderstanding. I love you. I would never—" "Stop talking." Clara's voice cut through his pleading like a knife. She turned to her father. "Did you know Sophie Bennett used to be the chief strategist for Titanium Ventures?" Robert Montgomery's eyes widened. "What?" Clara smiled, and it was not a kind smile. 5 years ago, Sophie helped Vincent build one of the most successful tech companies in the world. She did it anonymously because she didn't want the spotlight. And when I hired her as my assistant, I had no idea who she really was, but Marcus made a mistake. He was cruel to her, so cruel that I started to wonder why. And when I asked Sophie to look into Marcus's finances just to ease my mind, she found everything. Sophie stepped out of the shadows, walking down the aisle to join Vincent. The gray dress suddenly seemed less dowdy and more deliberately understated. Her posture changed, straightening, her chin lifting. "Hello, Marcus," Sophie said softly. "Remember what you said, that I'm a nobody, that I was the first person you'd fire." Marcus's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Vincent placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Ms. Bennett brought me documentation of your crimes 3 months ago. We've been building a case ever since. And now, the FBI is waiting outside to arrest you for fraud, forgery, and attempted grand larceny." "But why?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Why go through all this? Why not just expose me quietly?" Sophie stepped closer to him, her voice low enough that only those at the altar could hear. "Because you needed to feel what you made others feel. Small, powerless, humiliated. You needed to stand here in front of everyone who respected you, everyone you tried to impress, and have them see exactly what you are. A parasite, a coward, a nobody." Clara removed her engagement ring and placed it in Marcus's trembling hand. "I think we're done here." As if on cue, 2 FBI agents entered through the cathedral's rear doors. They approached the altar with practiced efficiency. Marcus Devereaux, you're under arrest for wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. As they read Marcus's rights and handcuffed him, his face had gone completely white. His legs buckled, and the agents had to hold him up. As they led him down the aisle, past the stunned guests, past his horrified groomsmen, past his parents who sat in shock, Marcus's eyes met Sophie's one last time. She smiled. It was a small smile, but it contained oceans of satisfaction. After Marcus was taken away, the cathedral remained in stunned silence. Clara turned to her guests. "I apologize for the drama, everyone. But I think we can all agree that was much more interesting than a standard wedding ceremony. There's still a reception, though I suspect the vibe will be quite different than planned. Please, join us in celebrating the fact that I dodged a massive bullet." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. As guests began filing out, Robert Montgomery approached Sophie and Vincent. "Miss Bennett," he said, extending his hand, "I owe you an enormous debt. If you hadn't uncovered this—" "I was just doing what needed to be done," Sophie said. "Clara's my friend. I couldn't let him hurt her." "Still," Robert looked at Vincent. "And you, Mr. Blackwell, why involve yourself? This couldn't have been cheap or easy." Vincent glanced at Sophie. 5 years ago, Miss Bennett helped me build something extraordinary. When she asked for help, there was never a question of whether I'd assist, only how quickly I could mobilize resources." Clara hugged Sophie tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me the truth." "Thank you for being brave enough to hear it," Sophie whispered back. As the cathedral emptied, Sophie stood alone for a moment, looking at the altar where Marcus had stood just minutes before, confident and cruel. She thought about the past 6 months, every insult, every moment of being treated as less than human. And she thought about how satisfying it had been to watch his face turn white as his world collapsed. Vincent approached, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. He offered her one. "To justice," he said. "To justice," Sophie echoed, clinking her glass against his. "What will you do now?" Vincent asked. "I have a position open at Titanium Ventures, Chief Operations Officer. It's yours if you want it." Sophie considered. "Maybe, but first I think I need a vacation, somewhere quiet, somewhere I can be nobody for a while." Vincent laughed. "I think you've earned that, but Sophie, you were never nobody, not to the people who matter." 3 months later, Sophie sat in a corner office on the 45th floor of Titanium Ventures headquarters. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the entire city spread out below her. Her computer screen showed the latest quarterly reports: profits up 32%, 3 new patents filed, expansion into Asian markets ahead of schedule. A notification popped up on her phone, a news alert. Former socialite Marcus Devereaux sentenced to 7 years for financial crimes. Sophie allowed herself a small smile. Justice, it turned out, was patient, but when it finally arrived, it was absolute. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Clara: "Drinks tonight, I'm buying." Sophie typed back, "Always." As she returned to her reports, Sophie reflected on what she'd learned. Power wasn't about being loud or cruel or dominant. Real power was quiet, strategic, patient. It was knowing when to stay in the shadows and when to step into the light. It was about building something meaningful, protecting the people you cared about, and when necessary, ensuring that those who abused their power faced consequences. Marcus had called her a nobody, but in the end, he'd been wrong about everything else too. Sophie Bennett was exactly who she'd always been, someone who got things done, who fought for what was right, and who never forgot that true strength came not from putting others down, but from lifting them up. If you enjoyed watching Marcus's downfall and Sophie's revenge, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us what you thought about this story. Would you have handled it the same way? What would you have said to Marcus at that altar? Let us know, and don't forget to like this video. We've got more incredible stories of justice and revenge coming your way, so stay tuned. Trust me, You won't want to miss what's next.